सो पीपल, मैं क्या कह रहा था, ये लाइट की वजह से अभी हमारा हाफ पोर्शन तो रह गया, बट मैंने न्यूज़पेपर कंप्लीट कर लिया है। हाफ से भी ज़्यादा बचा हुआ है, तो मैं वो आपके लिए कंटिन्यू कर रहा हूँ। ओके, क्योंकि यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा इलेक्ट्रिक इशू है। इसके पहले वाले वीडियो में आपने देखा होगा, इलेक्ट्रिक इशू है थोड़ा सा यहाँ पे। सॉरी, लेट मी एडजस्ट फर्स्ट। ओके, मुझे लगता है हो गया होगा। ओके, शुरू करते हैं। ये पेज नंबर 6 में एडिटोरियल पार्ट में है। द न्यू नॉर्मल इन द इंडो पैसिफिक contestation. Okay, as 2022 comes to an end, the world is embracing a new normal where new fault lines are being reconfigured in the Indo-Pacific. The Indian Ocean and South Asian region are at the heart of this contestation, considering their geopolitical and geo-economic prominences and India's emergence as a major power, as tensions between an aggressive China and an emerging India intensify. New Delhi's Quad partner are also making inroad in its backyard. Unhashing significant changes in the region. China widening outreach. China widening outreach. The contestation of South Asia and the Indian Ocean is not new. China has long tried to mark its influence in these regions and enhance its strategic ambitions, namely to limit Indian influence, military power and status, and to sustain its energy supply and economic growth. Beijing outreach in South Asia increased manifold in the early 2000s. With its economic boom, it began to further its strategic ends in the region through loans, financial incentives, and mega infrastructure projects. This become more institutionalized with the launch of the Belt and Road Initiatives, BRI, Belt and Road initiatives in 2013. Subsequently, these investments enabled Beijing to access the Indian Ocean, promote political and securities in the region, harbor military vessels and submarines, and take certain islands and ports on lease, including the Hambantota port of Sri Lanka. It is only with the Galwan clashes in 2022 that the Indian strategic thinking is deeming Beijing as a bigger threat than that of Islamabad. While the possibility of two front war persists, Pakistan's strategic isolation, economic and political fallout, and border and terror challenges emanating from Afghanistan have minimized the likelihood of its aggression. On the other hand, Beijing's larger strategic and diplomatic presence and grand ambitions have continued to trigger against for New Delhi. Steps by India, the rest of the Quad. After Galwan, New Delhi has re-energized diplomatic efforts in its backyard. In the Maldives, New Delhi is reciprocating President Ibrahim Solih India's first policy with massive economic assistance, grant and infrastructure projects, and by also cooperating on maritime security in Nepal. Prime Minister Devuba's government has attempted to improve Nepal's overall bilateral relations with India. In crisis hit Sri Lanka, India this year alone has provided economic and humanitarian assistance and investment worth 4 billion. India's leading effort in South Asia and the Ocean Asia have also attracted other Quad members. Japan Quad members में कौन कौन है? जापान Quad members. Quad members. Japan, Australia, and the United States. Australia. Close cooperation has ensued among these partners to collectively push against China and other genuine alternatives to the RBI. They have also been assisting Sri Lanka throughout the crisis. Japan is also finalizing its talk with Sri Lankan on debt restructuring in the Maldives. Australia and the US have committed to opening their embassies and new areas of cooperation in 2020. The US signed a defense and security framework with the Maldives earlier this year. Nepal also ratified the US Millennium Challenges Cooperation Nepal Compact, much to China's displeasure. However, the recent success of India and its partners is unlikely to deter China from furthering its presence in the region. Such an outcome is more unlikely with tension rising among Quad partners making inroad in South Asia. Earlier this month, the Chinese surveillance vessels Yuang 5, it had docked in Sri Lanka in August, re-entered the Indian Ocean. A similar incident occurred last month when another vessel of the Yuang series entered the Indian Ocean, coinciding with the test flight of the Agni series missile. Beijing also hosted its first ever China-Indian Ocean region forum to institutionalize its presence in the region and challenging new initiatives such as the Quad and the Colombo Security Conclave. A balancing act is likely. Beijing will continue to leverage its financial and economic might and political influence in South Asia, but most importantly, South Asian countries would also hesitate to completely move away from China, as they hope to exercise their agency by balancing with China and India, essentially making this competition a new normal. And this trend will only increase with new players entering the region. Such as balancing outcome is very likely with most South Asian countries now facing economic and political turmoil. The COVID-19 pandemic, the Russia invasion of Ukraine have continued to haunt the region. Nepal, the Maldives, and Bhutan are struggling with depleting forest reserves. Bangladesh has reached a bailout agreement from worth 4.5 billion with the International Monetary Fund. Sri Lanka is yet to chart its way out of the economic crisis. Energy, certain inflammation, and any negative or slow economic growth are also disrupting day-to-day activities in these countries. As 2023 marks an election year for a large part of South Asia, these economic grievances combined with political opportunism will likely fuel more instability in the region. Ongoing projects in Bangladesh are a mere indication of such upcoming challenges. New Delhi and its partners which have also started to make recent gains against China, should be ready to embrace. Let's move to the next topic. Vegetable prices in India are on a roller coaster ride. On a roller coaster ride. In the Hindu के पेज नंबर 7 पे है, vegetable prices in India are on roller coaster ride. As there is an alternating pattern of inflation peak and deflation trough, vegetable prices are highly volatile. Vegetable prices are highly volatile. Data point. डाटा पॉइंट में क्या है इसके? Vegetables prices in India are a roller coaster ride. As there is an alternating pattern of inflation peak and deflation trough, vegetable prices are highly volatile. Data point. Rebecca Rose Varghese and Vignesh Radhakrishnan in Monday, a member of the Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council, Poonam Gupta expressed her disappointment in the manner in which the monetary policy is held hostage by vegetables prices. She termed the monetary policy as a blunt instrument to address vegetable inflation. Surely our economy, which is more than 3 trillion, can manage its vegetable prices better than it has. These shocks, which hold the policy makers' attention unduly, I would say, can be addressed better, she said. She said at a discussion hosted by the Ananta Center on the upcoming union budget. The shocks that Ms. Gupta was referring to are the highly volatile retail and wholesale price of food products, especially vegetables. These shocks jolt the Indian economy every year. During some year, vegetable prices skyrocket and burn a hole in the pocket of consumer. During authors, they crash, leading farmers to dump their produce owing to negative returns. Chart 1. Chart 1 depicts the overall retail inflation and vegetable retail inflation every month between January 2014 and November 2022. Compared to vegetable inflation, overall retail inflation remained steady in the period, considered oscillation between 1.4% and 8.6%. However, vegetable inflation widely swung between 22% deflation and 60%. If we examine the January 2014 November 2022 period, vegetable prices hit a peak in a month and then rapidly decline. This led to a trough a year later. This was again This was again followed by a rapid ascent, leading to a never and much bigger peak a year later. The gap between peak inflation and peak deflation has also widened in recent months, pointing to an increase in the volatility of a commodity which was already volatile. Chart 2 show the retail inflation of select vegetables in the December month of each year. The graph further establishes the volatile nature of vegetable prices every odd year. There was inflation of vegetables prices, and every even year there was deflation. This cycle was seen across all vegetables, which means that the trend is not confined also only to onions, tomato, and potatoes. The three vegetables produced and consumed widely. Not only were the prices alternating, but the degree of inflation and deflation too recorded extreme variation. For instances, in 2015, carrot retail inflation was 7.97%. In 2017, it was over 50%. In 2018, the price of cauliflower decelerated by 4.4%. In 2020, it recorded a 22% declaration. Chart 3 shows how inflation varies within a year in select vegetables and in select stage. Chart 3a shows the price of a kg of potato during all the months across the last 7 years in Dehradun, Uttarakhand. Chart 3b shows the same for onion in Trivandrum, Kerala. Chart 3c shows the same for tomato in Ranchi, Jharkhand. All the three charts exhibits a common pattern. The prices of vegetables were the lowest in the summer month of March to May. They slowly began to rise in the southwest monsoon months of June to September. Then they peaked in the autumn month of October and November, or sometimes in December. Prices started to cool down in the late winter months. The January and February, this pattern shows that vegetables prices are tied to the Kharif and Rabi harvest cycles, and the resultant demand-supply gap in the market. They also depend on the failure of crops, which leads to a reduced supply amid increasing demand. Also, a sudden surge in production may lead to a glut with prices sharply decreasing due to high supply. पेज नंबर 8 पे आते हैं. ठीक है, पेज नंबर 8 पे अ न्यू ग्लोबल बायोडाइवर्सिटी फ्रेमवर्क है. तो पढ़ेंगे अ न्यू ग्लोबल बायोडाइवर्सिटी फ्रेमवर्क. What is Kunming-Montreal Agreement adopted by 188 of the 196 member nations during the Convention on biological diversity? What is the global environment facilities? Why should GDP be re-evaluated as the chief determinant of development? Whew. पेज नंबर 8 पे आते हैं और a new global biodiversity framework. Explainer G. The story so far: the Convention on Biological Diversity (CBD), the United Nations Agreement to conserve the sustainability use Earth's biodiversity, got a boost at a conference held in Montreal recently when 188 of 196 members agreed on a new framework to halt the sharp and steady loss of biological species. These governments, supported by the US and the Vatican, who are not party to the convention, adopted the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework (GBF), Global Biodiversity Framework (GBF), Global Biodiversity Framework (GBF) that sets out 4 goals for 2050 and 23 targets for 2030. Sets out 4 goals for 2050 and 23 targets for 2030. Target for 2030 to save existing biodiversity and ensure that 30% of degraded terrestrial, inland water, coastal and marine ecosystems come under effective restoration. Why is biodiversity important? Often called the web of life. Biodiversity signifies the variety of species on Earth, which are all connected and sustain the balance of ecosystem, enabling humans to coexist. They interact with the environment to perform a host of functions. The CPD state that only about 1.75 million species have so far been identified, including numerous insects, while there may be some 13 million species. Some familiar ecosystem services rendered by diverse living forms, of which plant and animals are the most visible, include providing humans with food, fuel, fiber, shelter, building materials, air and water purification, stabilization of climate, pollination of plants, including those used in agriculture, and moderating the effects of flood, drought, extreme temperature, and wind. A disruption of these producers impacts such as failed agriculture, aberrant climate patterns, and cascading losses of species that accelerate the degradation of Earth. According to the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platforms on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, IPBES, International Science Internet, Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. A quarter of the plant and animals it assessed for the 2019 Global Biodiversity Outlook are threatened, which translates to about about 1 million species facing extinction. Similarly, a review on the economic of biodiversity by Cambridge professor Partha Dasgupta, commissioned by the UK government, reported that the current model of economic growth would require 1.6 Earths to maintain current lifestyle. What does the Kunming Monetary Pact, Mon- Montreal Pact, aim to achieve? The agreements to the agreements to implement GBF. The agreement to implement the global biodiversity framework was pushed through on December 18 by the Chinese Conference Presidency and host Canada in the face of objection from some African countries such as the Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon and Uganda. It sets out target for 2030 on protection for degraded areas, resources mobilization and conservation compensation for countries that preserve biodiversity, halting human activity linked to species extinction, reducing by half the spread of invasive alien species, introduced plant and animals that affect an endemic biodiversity, cutting pollution to non-harmful levels and minimizing climate change impact and ocean acidification among other. GVF, the Global Biodiversity Framework goals and targets do not prohibit the use of biodiversity but call for sustainable use and a sharing of benefit from genetic resource. Target 5 specifically states that the use, harvesting, and trade in wild species should be sustainable. Sustainable, safe and legal, preventing exploitation, safe and legal, preventing exploitation, minimizing impacts on non-target species and ecosystem, and reducing the risk of pathogen spillover. The GBF Global Biodiversity Framework emphasize recent respect for the right of indigenous communities that traditionally protects forest and biodiversity and their involvement in conservation effort. It advocates roles for women and local communities. Agricultural practices also find a strong focus besides emphasizing sustainable practices in agriculture, aquaculture, fisheries, and forestry. The agreement calls upon members to adopt biodiversity supporting methods such as agroecology and sustainable intensification. This acquires significance since growing genetically modified crops is not favored by archaeologists as they could contaminate nearby wild species of the same plant. One target also looks at turning cities into host of biodiversity by expanding the area of area of and improving the quality of access to urban green and blue spaces. Urban planning should also be diversity inclusive, enhancing native biodiversity, ecological connectivity and integrity, and improving human health and well-being and connection to nature. Earlier, the CBD had launched the AG biodiversity targets for 2020, which included safeguard of all ecosystems that provide services for humanity's survival, and Nagoya Protocol, which went into effect in 2014 to ensure sharing of biodiversity access and benefits. What is the roadmap of 2030 and 2050? The key aspects. Question means what is the roadmap to 2030 and 2050? The key aspects of the 4GBF means Global Biodiversity Framework. Goals for 2050 deal with maintaining ecosystem integrity and health to health extension, mean measuring and valuing ecosystem services provided by biodiversity, sharing monetary and non-monetary gains from genetic resources and digital sequences of genetic resources with indigenous people and local communities, and raising resources for all countries to close the biodiversity finance gap of an estimated 700 dollar 700 billion. Recognizing the challenging nature of the goals and targets, the GBF has specified specific provisions on implementing and monitoring. Member nations need to submit a revised and updated nationally biodiversity strategy and action plan in the conference to be held in 2024. Further, the parties to the CBD should submit national report in 2026 and 2029 to help prepare global reviews. High level discussion on the progress review should be held in 2024 and 2026. Country would have to review existing laws relating to not just the environment but areas such as industry, agriculture, and land use to ensure that the national strategy and action plan adequately protects biodiversity. For instance, businesses and industry including transactional corporations would have to access, monitor, and report the risks and impacts of their operations and portfolios. They must provide information for sustainable consumption and comply with the ruler are benefits sharing preserves incentives that affect bodies. Biodiversity should be eliminated. Indigenous people, local communities, sub-national governments, cities and local authorities, intergovernmental organizations, multilateral environmental agreements, non-governmental organizations, women, youth, research organization, and the business and finance community have been invited to voluntarily participate in national biodiversity protection plans. There are specific indicators for countries to report their progress as part of the transparency and reporting arrangement. What funding arrangements are planned? By 2030, the GVF hopes to see at least 200 billion raised per year for all sources, domestic, international, public, and private, toward implementation of the national action plan. In terms of international funding, developing countries should get at least 20 billion a year by by 2025 and at least 30 billion by 2030 through contribution from developed countries. The Global Environment Facility, the Global Environmental Facility is a multilateral body that partners countries and agencies has been asked to establish in 2023 and until 2030 a special trust fund to support the implementation of the GBF. Complementing this, the GBF envisages that there will be access to justice and information related to biodiversity for indigenous people and local communities, respecting their culture and right over land, territories, resources, and traditional knowledge, as well as by women, children, and youth, and persons with disabilities, and ensure the full protection of environmental human rights. Defenders, the GBF Global Biodiversity Framework is aligned with UN Sustainable Development Goals, three of which directly deals with the environment of thus the biodiversity. Goal 13 on climate action, Goal 14 on life below water, and Goal 15 on life on land. What are the challenges to protecting biodiversity? What are the challenges to protecting the biodiversity? What are the challenges to protecting biodiversity? The major challenges to protecting the expanding biodiversity conservation, says Professor Parth Dasgupta, is the use of GDP as a chief determinant of development. The Economist says in the Dasgupta Reviews report that GDP is based on a faulty application of economics that excludes the depreciation of assets like nature, which is degraded by relentless extraction of resources. He calls for appreciation of nature. And measuring inclusive wealth, which capture not just financial and produced capital but also human, social, and natural capital. The UN's effort to measure wealth more broadly through its inclusive wealth (IW) report showed in 2018 that although 135 countries did better on inclusive wealth in 2014 compared to 1990, the global GDP growth rate considerably outpaced IW, an average of 1.8% per year for IW compared to 3.4% for GDP per year during the period. प्यास, पानी। ये कंप्लीट हुआ हमारा। कुछ और आर्टिकल बचे हुए हैं। Let's move on to International Organization of Russia. Russian oil, page number 9 पे Russian oil might just fumble. Okay. Restricting the price at which Russia can sell its oil will inevitably कुछ कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्क चल रहा है, शांत हो जाओ भाई। Russia can sell its oil will inevitably affect the country's incentive to pump oil into the market. The West attempt to cut Russia's oil revenue without drastically affecting global oil supplies may be to find a balanced act in the long run. The group of seven the group of seven G7 countries, the group of seven G7 countries, the European Union, the European Union and Australia have imposed a price cap on Russian seaborne oil to make it harder for Russia to fund its war against Ukraine. Under the plan which took effect on December 5, Western companies that dominate the global oil shipping and insurance businesses will be banned from offering their services to ship or insurance Russian oil that is purchased at more than $60 per barrel. The price cap is an attempt by the West to cut Russia oil revenues without affecting oil supplies. It should be noted that since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, the West has been trying to limit Russia's energy revenue. At the same time, since Russia is a major oil producer that contributes more than 10% of the overall global supply, the West has been wary of imposing sanctions that could cause oil supply from Russia to fall steeply and send oil prices shooting up. In fact, it is estimated that crude oil prices could rise to as much as $200 per barrel if oil supply from Russia were to be disrupted by Western sanctions. Noted economists such as Janet Yellen Janet Yellen, currently U.S. Treasury Secretary, and Mario Draghi, till recently Prime Minister of Italy, have been at the forefront of pushing the idea of a price cap, which they believe will limit Kremlin's oil revenue without affecting global oil supplies. Even though the West has cut down its purchase of Russian oil this year, Russia has been able to sell its oil to India and China to keep its energy revenue buoyant. The price cap could be seen as an attempt by the West to make buyers of Russian oil pay less for the oil they purchase, thus preventing the Kremlin from profiting too much from its oil sales. Russia has already had to sell its oil at discounted rates, which the West sees as a partial success in its effort to choke Kremlin's revenue by refusing to purchase Russian oil. It is estimated that Russia, with a cost of production of somewhere between $20 and $45 per barrel, will earn a small profit on its oil sales. At the moment, Russian oil is trading at a price that is below the cap of $60 per barrel imposed by the West. However, the average price of Russian Urals over the last 60 years has been about 67 over the last 10 years has been of about $75 per barrel. So while the price cap of $60 per barrel is unlikely to adversely affect the supply of Russian oil or Moscow revenue. In the short run, it is likely to have adverse effect in the longer run. When the market price of Ural rises above $60, this could increase the chances of violation of the price cap by traders. The higher the market price when compared to the price cap, the higher also will be the incentive for traders to bypass the price cap and sell Russian oil at a price higher warning buyers this would in effect undermine the West's effort to prevent Russia from earning the market price on its oil. But even if the West somehow managed to effectively implement the 60 per barrel price cap, it cannot it cannot really hope to restrict Russia revenues through a price cap without also affecting oil supplies adversely at the same time. Questions of incentives. Question of incentives. Restricting the price at which Russia can sell its oil will inevitably affect the country's incentives to pump oil into the market. Economists backing the price cap believe that Russia would continue exporting oil as long as the price cap is above Russia's cost of production of barrel of oil. In particular, Russia kept up its oil production even during the COVID-19 pandemic when oil prices fell below $20. But expecting Russia to behave the same way in the future with price cap limiting its revenue may be unrealistic. It could well be that Russia expected the fall in oil demand during the pandemic to be a contemporary blip. In such a scenario, it may have been more cost effective to keep oil wells operating instead of shutting them down to reopen them later. If price cap persists over the long run, however, this is bound to affect Russia incentive to keep its oil wells open. It should also be remembered that in the long run, production decisions are based not merely on the cost of production but also on the potential rate of return from other investments. If investments in oil do not offer returns at least equal to or better than other sectors, Russia may well decide to cut its oil investment, and this would affect supplies adversely. Such a tendency was obvious when oil price dropped by about 70% from mid 2014 to early 2016, pushing West Asian oil producers such as Saudi Arabia to look at diversifying their economies away from the oil industry. The West would do well to keep these factors in mind when it imposes price caps in the belief they would have no adverse effect on supplies. Whew. Page number 10. If not reformed, UN will be overtaken by other organizations. If not reformed, UN will be overtaken by other organizations. Process. While process may be complex, it does not mean change cannot happen. Ruchira Kamboj says, adding it has been an agenda for 3 decades. Organizations such as the G20 may step up to take a more prominent role in international affairs than the United Nations. If the global body fails to introduce reforms in the UN Security Council, Ruchira Kamboj, the permanent representative of India at the UN said speaks on the issues reform, multilateralism and counter-terrorism during the December presidency of India at the UNESCO. Ms. Kamboj said that the reformation of the United Nations is the most complex process of the UN system. It involves several aspects. It required all the P5 permanent members of the UNESCO to be on board. It requires that no P5 should veto the matter and all of that and much more. There are many more who aspire to be reformed council, but there are many who would not like to see those in the council. Therefore, the process is indeed very complex. MS Kamboj. MS Kamboj said stressing that the complexities, however, do not mean that change cannot happen. MS Kamboj said that there is a lot of pessimism and cynicism about the possibilities of reform of the UN Security Council as the item of reform has remained on the agenda of the UNESCO for nearly 3 decades without any substantive progress. Harsh B. Pant, who moderated the session, raised the possibilities of minilaterals playing a more active role in global affairs. To which MS Kamboj said that it is a possibility if the reform of the UNESCO refuses to make any progress. Today you have almost 200 member states that their voices are not being heard anymore. Let's say the voice of the voiceless, the smaller states, the countries from Africa, who hears them. Everything is being scripted for them in many ways. Ms. Kamboj said, warning that maybe the UN will be overtaken by other institutions. For example, that are more democratic, such as G20. The envoy, however, urged not to rush to any conclusion on such possibilities. इसी पेज पे हमको एक और सिक्योरिटी चेक. No survey done to identify numbers of EWS resident government. No survey done to identify number of EWS resident government. Center had said that it was relying on the data compiled in the poverty index by Niti Aayog. The Union government has not conducted any survey, nor it is considering a proposal to conduct one of identifying the number of beneficiaries entitled to the economically weaker EWS reservation of Ministry of Social Justice and Employment said in response to a question from Sajda Ahmed of the Trinamool Congress in the Lok Sabha on Tuesday. While the Supreme Court earlier this year heard the constitutionality of the EWS reservation, the Union government orally told the Constitution Bench that it was relying on the data compiled in the Niti Aayog multi-dimensional poverty index to estimate that 18.2% of the general category population would fall under the EWS category, which would be about 3.5 crore. However, in the EWS judgment penned by Justice Dinesh Maheshwari, the court had held that the question of whether any particular classification as economically weaker section is based on relevant data and factors, and its extent could be the matter of consideration. As and when arising the Supreme Court bench hearing the challenges to the income challenge to the income criteria of EWS reservation had also questioned the Union government over what data it had considered to arrive at the 8 lakh criterion for annual family income. The bench had gone on to ask the government if it had lifted the income criteria from the OBC ceremonies with layer criteria directly, saying that would be unfair since those qualifying under the those qualifying under the EWS category are not facing social and educational backwardness like OBCs. Interestingly, in responses to another question, Social Justice Minister Pratima Bhaumik said that the Constitution did not give the mandate to prescribe different yardstick for economic parity of two communities within the same country. Page number MP across the Islay break bread at a feast of millets. Government hosts a launch with an exclusive packet power packed menu. Prime Minister calls upon member to serve millet dishes in meeting. The law says it will help small farmers. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday extolled the virtue of millets and sports in improving citizens' health to BJP MPs on a day when the government hosted a launch for MPs with an exclusive menu of millet. He was addressing a meeting of the BJP parliamentary party when he made these remarks. Briefing press person after the meeting, Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi said that the Prime Minister told BJP MPs that making millets grown by most small farmers in the country popular amount to serving the country high on nutrition. Mr. Modi noted that the United Nations had declared 2023 as the International Year of Millets upon high government request, as he had called for making the bouquet of grain that are high on nutrition a popular choice of foods for the people of the country, with tens of thousands of foreign delegates expected to attend a large number of meetings associated with the G20 that is being chaired by India. Mr. Modi said that millets will be on the menu. They can be used in Anganwadi, school, homes, and government meetings as well, he added. The Prime Minister urged MPs to use millet items in the meeting they host, as over 85% of Indian farmers falling in the category of small farmer grow millets in large number. A rise in the consumption of these grains will help them financially, he noted. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also made a presentation on the UP. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also made a presentation on the upcoming G20 summit, where India has just assumed the presidency. Khelo India. Mr. Modi asked the MP to promote the sports meets with focus on Indian games. Focus on Indian games such as kabaddi. Hosting a sport meets has been an initiative of the BJP and the Union government in the past few years with initiatives such as Khelo India. With initiatives such as Khelo India. ओह, इसी पे एक और टॉपिक है यूनेस्को से रिलेटेड, उसको भी देख लेते हैं. 3 more sites added to tentative list of UNESCO. 3 more sites. 3 more sites added to tentative list of UNESCO. The Hindu Bureau. New Delhi, Gujarat, Vadnagar. Gujarat, Vadnagar. Town, the Gujarat Vadnagar town iconic sun temple at the Modhera and the rock cut sculpture of Unakoti in Tripura have been added to the tentative list of UNESCO World Heritage Site. गुजरात में वडनगर नाम आइकॉनिक सन टेम्पल एट द मोधेरा एंड द रॉक कट स्कल्पचर ऑफ उनाकोटी in Tripura have been added to the tentative list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The UNESCO tentative list in an inventory of those properties which each state party intend to consider for nomination. With this, India now has 52 sites on UNESCO tentative list. The list indicates rich cultural and natural wealth of India and so huge diversity of our heritage. Union Culture Minister G. Krishnan, Union Culture Minister G. Kishan Reddy, Union Culture Minister. Tweeted, I congratulate ASI, Archaeological Survey of India, for their role in identifying more monuments and places for the World Heritage nomination. He said that the ASI said that the step will provide a big boost to Indian cultural heritage. The Sun Temple at Modhera, which is dedicated to the sun god, is the earliest of the such temples which set trends in archaeological and decorative details, representing the Solanki style at its best. Vadnagar is a municipality in Mehsana district of Gujarat. A multi-layered historic town, Vadnagar has a recorded past stretching back to nearly 8th century BC. The town still retains a large number of historic buildings that are primarily religious and residential in nature. Unakoti is an ancient holy place associated with Shiva worship. The site is a The site is a massive gallery set in a forested area, displaying a number of towering, low relief images in a unique style, making it a masterpiece of human creative genius. Submarine warriors. Navy states delivery of submarine Vajir to be commissioned in Jain. Navy takes delivery of submarine Vajir to be commissioned in Jain. The, the fifth Scorpion class conventional submarine Vajir was delivered to the Navy by Mazagon Dock Shipbuilder Limited in Mumbai on Tuesday. The ship is scheduled to be commissioned into service in January. A Navy official said it is a matter of great pride that Vajir has completed all major trials including vapor and sensor trials in the shortest time in comparison to the earlier submarines. The Navy said in the statement, a notable achievement in that this is the third submarine delivered to the Navy in a span of 24 months, it added. Sixth one in the works. Vajir was launched into the water on November 2020 and commenced sea trials on February 1, 2022. The sixth and the last of the Scorpion class submarine Vajir was launched into water and is expected to be delivered to the Navy by 2023. And French collaboration. 6 Scorpion submarines are being built under projected 75 by MDL under technology transfer from the Naval Group of France under a 3.75 billion deal signed in October 2005. The project is about 4 years behind the original schedule. The first submarine INS Calvary was commissioned in December 2017. The second INS Kanderi in September 2019. The third INS Karanj in March 2021, and the fourth INS Vela in November 2021. Parallelly, the tender to build 6 more advanced conventional submarines on the project 75I is the request for proposal RFP stage, but the suffered delay in submarine introduction. The SSKs 209 as German HDWS and EKMS Russian kilos are being put through the medium refit life certification process, which will give them an additional life of 10 to 15 years. AIP modules. The Navy currently has 15 conventional and 1 new nuclear submarine in services. It includes 7 Russian kilo class submarine, 4 German SDW submarine, and 4 Scorpion class submarines, and the indigenous nuclear ballistic missiles. Submarine INS Arihant. The Navy has drawn up plans to install air independent propulsion AIP modules on all Scorpion submarines as they go for their rift, beginning with the INS Calvary in the next couple of years to enhance their endurance. Development of an indigenous AIP modules developed by the developed by the Defense Research and Development Organization, is in advanced stage. Speeding of COVID-19, geos me. Sorry. Speed of COVID-19 genome sequencing, says Health Ministry. With a spot in coronavirus. With a spot in coronavirus cases reported in China, the US and South Korea, India's health ministry has asked the state to bolster genome sequencing of the virus samples. Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia is not set to review India's COVID-19 situation on Wednesday. In view of the spot in positive cases, it is essential to gear up the whole genomic sequencing of positive case sample to track variants through the Indian SARS-CoV-2 Genomic Consortium (INSACO) network. Such an exercise will enable timely detection of newer variants, if any, said a letter to the state government signed by Health Secretary Rajesh Bhushan on Tuesday. India has been reporting around 1,200 cases a week with the COVID-19 tally since March 2020 at 4.4 crore. Currently, there are around 3,500 active infections. The lifting of curbs in China, media reports suggest, has resulted in a spurt in infections, though the official numbers continue to be low. There is reportedly a scramble of hospitals, beds, and pharmacies are running low on essential medicine in China. The country reported 2 deaths this week since December 3. A leading epidemiologist in China, Wu Chuanyu, has said that he expects a spike in cases lasting until early January and 2 other spikes in mid-January and February because of the rise in travel. तो पीपल मैं तो ये कहूँगा कि जो भी हार्ड वर्ड रहा होगा, मैंने स्टार्टिंग में भी इसके पहले सेशन स्टार्ट किया, शायद आप लोग को आइडिया नहीं होगा, वो उसमें लाइट इशू था, करंट इशू था, तो वो था। तो मैं बता दूं कि अभी कि इसमें जो भी हार्ड मीनिंग रहा हो, आप एक बार गूगल पे सर्च करना, ओके, एंड कमेंट डाउन करना क्योंकि गूगल पे आप लोग सब सर्च करोगे या विकीपीडिया पे, एक पैराग्राफ आ जाएगा जो सबसे ऊपर रहता है, उसको कॉपी करो, पढ़ो, खुद भी जानो, और साथ साथ कमेंट डाउन भी कर देना कि जो और लोग पढ़े उनकी हेल्प हो जाए। ओके, तो ये एक रिक्वेस्ट है, और सब्सक्राइब कर लो, मेरे साथ यूपीएससी प्रिपरेशन करो, ये गारंटी है कि मेरा भी होगा और आपका भी होगा। जल्द मिलते हैं हाफ एन आवर ब्रेक के बाद। हिस्ट्री और इकोनॉमिक्स का कुछ पार्ट बचा हुआ है तो उसको पढ़ेंगे हम लोग। ओके, बाय बाय।